Vincent of Beauvais relates that in an English city about the year 1430, there was a young nobleman called Ernest, who having distributed the whole of his patrimony to the poor, became a monk, and in the monastery to which he retired, led so perfect a life that he was highly esteemed by his superiors, and this esteem was greatly increased by their knowledge of his tender devotion to the most blessed Virgin. It happened that the city was attacked by the plague, and the inhabitants had recourse to the monastery, in order that the religious might help them by their prayers. The abbot commanded Ernest to go and pray before the altar of Mary, forbidding him to leave it until he should have received an answer from our Blessed Lady. The young man, after remaining for 3 days in prayer, received an answer from Mary to the effect that certain prayers were to be said. This was done, and the plague ceased. After a time, Ernest cooled in his devotion towards Mary. The devil attacked him with many temptations, and particularly with those against purity, and also to leave his monastery. From not having recommended himself to Mary, he unfortunately yielded to the temptation, and resolved to escape by climbing over a wall. Passing before an image of Mary, which was in the corridor, the Mother of God addressed him, saying, "My son, why dost thou leave me?" Ernest, thunderstruck and repentant, sunk to the ground and replied, "But lady, dost thou not see that I can no longer resist? Why dost thou not assist me? And why hast thou not invoked me?" said our Blessed Lady. "If thou hast recommended thyself to me, thou wouldst not have fallen so low, but from henceforth do so and fear nothing." Ernest returned to his cell. His temptations recommenced. Again he neglected to recommend himself to Mary, and at last fled his monastery. He then gave himself up to a most wicked life, fell from one sin into another, and at length became an assassin. For having hired an inn, during the night he used to murder the poor travelers who slept there. Amongst others, he one night killed the cousin of the governor of the place. For this crime he was tried and sentenced to death. It so happened that before he was made a prisoner, and whilst evidence was being collected, a young nobleman arrived at the inn. The wicked Ernest, as usual, determined to murder him, and entered the room at night for this purpose. But lo, instead of finding the young man, he beheld a crucifix on the bed, all covered with wounds. The image cast a look of compassion on him and exclaimed, "Ungrateful wretch, is it not enough that I have died once for thee? Wilt thou again take my life? Be it so. Raise thy hand, strike." Filled with confusion, poor Ernest began to weep, and sobbing, said, "Behold me, Lord, since thou showest me such mercy, I will return to thee." Immediately he left the inn to return to his monastery, there to do penance for his crimes. But on the road he was taken by the ministers of justice, was led before the judge, and acknowledged all the murders he had committed. He was sentenced to be hung, without having even the time given him to go to confession. He recommended himself to Mary, and was thrown from the ladder. But the Blessed Virgin preserved his life, and she herself loosened the rope, and then addressed him, saying, "Go, return to thy monastery, do penance, and when thou seest a paper in my hands, announcing the pardon of thy sins, prepare for death." Ernest returned, related all to his abbot, and did great penance. After many years he saw the paper in the hands of Mary, which announced his pardon. He immediately prepared for death, and in a most holy manner breathed forth his soul.